We are the city of big shoulders. And may we carry this weight together. We may not be all responsible for broken windows, but we are accountable for performing last rites on a disease that infects and affects every single citizen in the United States of this we call America.
That was Reverend Otis Moss this past Sunday, calling on Chicago to organize peacefully and rise up against racism after the violence and looting broke out last week during the citywide protests. Joining us live with more is Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III of the Trinity United Church of Christ. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Pastor,
Thank you.
can we talk about the sermon that you gave virtually after hearing about the death of George Floyd? You said that you were drained after hearing of his death, and you asked, when is someday? What did you mean by that?
We often sing the song, We Shall Overcome Someday. And I raise the question, when is someday? Is someday after there are no more bones to break? Is someday after there are no more necks to show? Is someday after there is no proper funding for schools? Is someday after we have completely decimated the community? It is a question, a rhetorical and spiritual question that we have to raise in our community and across these yet-to-be United States of America.
Reverend, I also heard you say recently that a number of events that, as it turns out, have happened in just the last few weeks have really pulled back the Band-Aid, in your words.
Absolutely. First, we have Ahmaud Arbery. Then we have the killing of Breonna Taylor. Then you have George Floyd. But this is a succession. America is dealing with two pandemics, one COVID-19 and the other is COVID-16-19, the moment that people of African descent arrived on these shores. And we have been resisting against this particular epidemic. And now, for the first time in American history, we are seeing a multiracial coalition that at least recognizes the anguish that people of African descent are experiencing.
It has been called by some America's original sin, racism. Can it be eradicated? You call it a viral agent.
It is. It is a viral agent. It affects the spirit, it affects the soul, it affects the mind. The only way in order to remove racism, racial terror, white supremacy from America is there has to be a revolution and a revival, a revolution that creates an entirely new system, but a moral revival where we operate out of a different value system that is not rooted on predatory self-interest.
How do we get there, Reverend? What is that call to action? How does it look? And do you think we can?
Every sector of not only our city, but our nation must organize. I said before that we may not all be directly responsible for a broken window, but we are all accountable in this nation. This nation was built on Black wealth and Black genius. This nation was built on land that was stolen from another group of people. We have to acknowledge the history, and then we have to organize to build institutions that have a moral center. Our educational system must have a moral center to build our students up, that they may have illuminated minds that are willing to transform our community. We must have a moral economy where wealth is not concentrated in one sector, but we recognize when one area of our city develops, it is a blessing to all in this city. But we have to have the spiritual, political, and economic will. And I believe that all of the young people that you see out there recognize that they do not want to go back. They want to see America attempt to live up to the promises that have been enshrined in some of the mythos that we have passed on from generation to generation.
Let's not forget it was also built on Black labor. What do we tell our Black children? What do we tell our Black sons? What do we tell the folks protesting? What do we tell the looters?
First of all, we tell our children that the act of resistance, the challenge of building a new nation has been passed on from generation to generation. We tell them that they cannot get tired. Harriet Tubman didn't get tired, but Harriet Tubman was making a way for Michelle Obama. We can't get tired because Frederick Douglass was making a way for Barack Obama. We also have to tell them that America, unfortunately, there is a flaw in this nation. It was built on looting. They looted Native American land, looted the bodies of people of African descent, and we have to shape a new economy. And a moral revival is important. We do not want to tear down the house and rebuild it with the tools of the one who was the master of the house, in the words of Audre Lorde. We want to build something new, a beloved community, a true city that sits upon a hill.
You just recently released a film in honor of Ahmaud Arbery, and I'm guessing you had no idea what was to come here just a few days later in Minneapolis. How has that changed the message of that film? And remind us of what that was.
I appreciate you asking that. We had no idea what would happen next, but the film about Ahmaud Arbery, it's called The Cross and the Lynching Tree, a Requiem for Ahmaud Arbery, goes through the history of how we got to this murder of Ahmaud Arbery. The criminalization of black bodies, the weaponization of black bodies, and the fact that black wealth and black labor and black genius built this country. The wealth of our spirit, the wealth of our mind, the genius of our cultural creativity, and the genius and the wealth of our hands built this country, and how we have criminalized black bodies that led to the peonage movement after 1877 in the Reconstruction, then moved into the war on drugs, which has militarized our policing here in the United States in the 70s up to today, what Michelle Alexander calls the new Jim Crow. So when these two men witnessed Ahmaud Arbery running, just trying to stay in shape, they didn't see a human being that was running in the sun, breathing fresh air, trying to stay in shape and enjoying himself. They first saw a criminal, and they felt it was their duty as men in Brunswick, Georgia, that has a unique history in reference to people of African descent. It was their duty to stop him.
And quickly, with all that has been said, how do we remain hopeful?
We remain hopeful when I look out and I see young people, black, white, Asian, immigrant, documented, undocumented, queer, trans, out here fighting for a new America. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because in the process of looking at our blues, we are still seeing the good news of a new possibility. I'm hopeful because there is such incredible energy. I'm hopeful when I see students taking a knee, and I see an officer so deeply moved that they have to take a knee. I'm hopeful because there will be a generation that is not yet born that will say that there were a people before us that were willing to build something unique, open the door just enough so that we would have the courage to walk through, so that everybody would be able to feel the sunlight in this democracy we call America.
Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III of the Trinity United Church of Christ, thank you so much for being with us this evening. Be safe, be well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, there's